Horrifying moment. How Ukraine surrounded and eliminated 10,000 Russian troops near Avdiivka Donetsk. Russia's Avdiivka offensive had started with shock and awe. After incremental Russian advances over the previous winter, by early October, the city had become a bulging salient in the front line, with Russian positions both on the northern and southern flanks, less than 5 kilometers away from the main road into the urban area. Reminiscent of the mindless columns of armor that tried to take Vuhledar last winter, Russian tanks and armored vehicles were churned up in their dozens by Ukrainian artillery, anti-tank fire, and FPV, first-person view, drones. The endless videos of graveyards of Russian men and equipment in the fields around Avdiivka were reflected in Ukrainian official figures on enemy losses, with daily numbers often breaking records set during the brutal battle for Bakhmut around a year earlier. 1 month into the offensive, Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Valerii Zaluzhnyi reported that over 10,000 Russian soldiers had been killed in action in the Avdiivka area alone, while over 100 tanks, 250 armored vehicles and 7 Su-25 combat aircraft had also been destroyed. As the initial failures became obvious, Russian tactics quickly changed in the second half of November to something much more familiar. Slow, systematic infantry assaults of the kind that had slowly led to Russia taking the city of Bakhmut, 50 kilometers north of Avdiivka. If you count how many losses the soldiers of the 110th Brigade and the other units have inflicted on the enemy personnel and equipment, you have to be blind to not understand that you can't take Avdiivka in a rush like that. You have to change something, said Anton Kutsukin, a spokesperson for the brigade, to the Kyiv Independent. Although the Wagner mercenary group, which had pioneered such tactics in Bakhmut, is no longer in the fight, Russia has instead turned to regular mobilized troops, along with Storm Z units recruited from the Russian prison system. Just as in the case of Wagner, these assaults have been characterized by a complete lack of interest in the lives of Russian soldiers. In recent times, they use quite a wild tactic. They send a squad of 10 to 20 people into the attack, and at the same time they raise a very large number of drones into the air, Kotsukun said. Our artillery and other fires start to target this enemy infantry group, and these drones try to see the positions where we are operating from. It's a completely inhumane tactic, but what can you expect from the Russians? It's not a new thing that they treat their soldiers like meat. Speaking to the Kyiv Independent, Kasper Grosse, a 25-year-old German-born volunteer medic in the 59th Mechanized Brigade, which fights on Avdiivka's southern flank, said that by now, Russian armored vehicles were not used to support assaults, leaving the unexperienced infantry exposed to Ukrainian fire. They, Russian soldiers, get dropped off by BMPs, infantry fighting vehicles, around 300 to 600 meters from you, depending on how daring the driver is. And then straight away, the BMP leaves without giving any fire support, he said. Maybe 3 of them try and run straight back and follow the BMP. Another 2, on average, might get in some ditch and not move again until it's over. And those which actually have some balls will go for the assault. But they don't make it far. At the stabilization point of the 110th Mechanized Brigade, medical workers catch up on some sleep while waiting for the wounded. The operating theaters are closed, but the corridor remains lit up as the steady hum of medical machines and distant radio chatter can be heard in the background. The silence is broken at around 5 a.m. by the sound of a car outside and the quick call of a wounded soldier has arrived. Propped up by a paramedic, a 40-something man in a beat-up winter uniform hobbles down the corridor. Dazed and unresponsive, with dried blood over his face and neck, he is nonetheless in one piece. Just a light wound this time. The soldier struggles to present his documents, or to answer which unit he is from exactly. But that is nothing out of the ordinary for the medics. After a short cleanup of the wounds, he leaves as quickly as he arrived. According to the medical workers, the soldier's wounds were likely from an FPV drone strike nearby. He has suffered minor shrapnel wounds as well as a concussion. 3 other wounded were treated that night, in a separate mobile operating theater donated outside the building. This, Kolesnikov said, was one of the quietest nights they'd had since the beginning of October.
Нина!